And so this is what we do as organizers. We encourage people that they have to become activists because this is the way that we can make the changes that we need. We know that we have so many issues right now that need to be addressed and need to be corrected in our society. But we know that one person can't do it alone.
Hey, y'all. Welcome to The Amendment, a weekly conversation about gender, politics, and power from the 19th News and Wonder Media Network. I'm your host, Erin Haynes. And today, we have the honor of sitting down with a true trailblazer, a living legend in the fight for equality and justice, Dolores Huerta. At 94 years old, Dolores has dedicated her life to the pursuit of civil rights, advocating tirelessly for farm workers, women, and marginalized communities across the United States. As a co-founder of the United Farm Workers alongside Cesar Chavez, Dolores Huerta played a pivotal role in securing better working conditions and rights for agricultural laborers, inspiring generations with her unwavering commitment to social change that persists to this day. So in a time of heightened social and political unrest, we can learn a lot from women like Dolores. Young people all over the country have been taking to the streets to protest and demand change, similar to how Dolores did decades ago. So in our conversation today, we're going to delve into Dolores' remarkable journey. We'll also get into the advice she has for this generation of activists during this critical election year. Dolores, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
As I mentioned, you co-founded the United Farm Workers alongside Cesar Chavez. Can you walk us through that journey of starting this movement and the challenges that you faced in those early days?
Well, I was very fortunate to be able to be very familiar with the plight of farm workers as I grew up in an agricultural community. But trying to find out and figure out how we could help them, that was the difficult part. But having learned how to do grassroots community organizing, I realized probably the best way to help farm workers was to be able to help them form their own organization, their own union. And that way they could do the advocacy that was needed to be able to get the benefits that they had been denied and to get the wages that they were entitled to. So I was very blessed to have that kind of training of doing grassroots organizing and then empowering the workers, because the one thing about doing the grassroots organizing, as we learned also in the women's movement, the only people that can really solve their problems are the people that are being affected by the problems. And yes. So if you convince the farm workers that they had the power, that they didn't have to depend on somebody coming in from the outside to do it for them. And then it was a lasting change.
Yes, standing up for people so that they could, helping them to stand up for themselves. That was absolutely the lesson in the work that you did with UFW and that you continue to do. So the UFW was successful at advocating for the rights of farm workers in a lot of ways. What do you think were some of your most significant victories, and what do you think led to that success?
Well, it took a lot of work. The workers, as you know, they went on strike for 5 years. They had to do boycotts of grapes, boycotts of lettuce, picketing the grocery stores, asking people not to buy at the stores because they were carrying grapes. So we had to do not only a national, but an international boycott, because yes. The boycott of grapes and lettuce was not only in the United States, it also extended to Europe. But people out there, they really supported the workers. And once they understood what the problems were and what they had to do, and it was pretty simple, just say, okay, just don't buy grapes, don't buy lettuce. Picket those stores that are carrying these products to get other people not to buy them. So it was a community effort. And at the end of our organizing for the boycott, we had 17 million Americans here that did not buy grapes or lettuce.
That's amazing, because we know that all those people were not farm workers, but you got them to care about the plight of the farm workers and for them to understand the connection between those farm workers and themselves. They were in community together and they all took a stand and were able to make change. That is a really significant victory and key to the success, that coalition that you were able to build through millions of people across this country, around the world. So throughout your remarkable career, you have been a driving force behind numerous social movements. You continue to be that force. I know you've already mentioned women's rights. I mean, what motivated you to dedicate your whole life to activism?
Well, because we know that that's the only way that you can make change. And I love to quote Cesar Chavez on this. Cesar said, to young people, when you're a student and you're in school, you read about history, you talk about history, you write about history. But when you become an activist, you make history. And so this is what we do as organizers. We encourage people that they have to become activists because this is a way that we can make the changes that we need. We know that we have so many issues right now that need to be addressed and need to be corrected in our society. But we know that one person can't do it alone. The only way that you can make it happen is when you have a lot of people that come together and they use the political pressure on legislators, on politicians, on government employees to make the changes that we need.
Yeah, you're making me think back to what young Dolores must have been like. I mean, did you see yourself as an activist when you were a young girl, when you were growing up? What was it that was in you as a young woman that made you decide that you wanted to get in the fight, that you wanted to push for change around these issues? I think some people think, they have a certain idea of what an activist looks like. Activists are everyday people that get involved.
My mother was a very charitable person. She was a businesswoman, and she was always helping people in the community. So we grew up with that tradition. Mm-hmm. And the idea is that you were supposed to help people. This is your responsibility as a human being. If you see someone that needs help, you're supposed to help them. And you're not supposed to expect any kind of a reward or gratification from that. So that was such a mandate. But the transition that I had to make, it's about getting people to help themselves, okay? And that was hard. That was hard because it's really easy to go out there and help people out when they have an issue, advocate for them. But then when you say to them, no, you've got to advocate for yourself, okay? That makes it a little bit tougher. And that's also a lot of us that do social justice work, that we have to understand how important that is.
Yeah, well, I want to talk to you a little bit about how that community organizing happens, because it does often involve mobilizing people from diverse backgrounds around a common cause. So how do you build solidarity and foster cooperation among different groups within a community?
Well, I think we always have to think in terms of integration. It's important for us to work on civil rights issues, but as we do that, we have to always keep in mind that women need to be included and that we have to promote women's leadership. We also have to be conscious to include our LGBTQ partners also in the work that we do. Because if we can do this bringing and weaving all of our movements together, that makes us very, very strong, including our labor unions, our community organizations, and in some cases, some religious organizations. So sometimes we have to choose our partners, but we should never exclude anybody that can help us on any one particular issue.
Well, I want to ask you about young people as well, because in recent years, and especially right now, we've seen so many young people taking to the streets, demanding change. What do you believe distinguishes effective protest movements from the struggle to create meaningful change? Like, are there key strategies or principles that contribute to success?
Well, we know that many of the achievements that we have, including the 19th Amendment, were because women took to the streets and they went to jail. And ending the Vietnam War, it was the young people that took to the streets that finally ended the Vietnam War. And we see this happening now with what's happening in the Middle East. So it's the young people that are they're protesting, they're taking the streets, and again, they're going to jail because they know that this is an unjust war that is happening against the people of Palestine. It's always the young people that are out there that are going to make the difference. The one thing, though, I do want to point out, one place where we did not have success, and this is after George Floyd was murdered. Mm-hmm. So we had people taking the streets, not only in the United States, but all over the world.
Yes.
And yet we know that when it came to the police reform that they were seeking, it still has not happened. So this is why I like to say to young people, it's important to protest, it's important to march, but we've got to take that march to the ballot box. We have to get a legislator to submit legislation for the things that we want to change. And then we have to work very hard to make sure that that legislation, that policy that we want, that it passes. It means we have to do a lot of work on the ground to put the pressure on the other Congress people or the other state legislators to pass those laws. Then we have, once we get the law passed, then we have to make sure that it is enforced. And of course, that's what we have to fight right now to make sure that our right to vote is enforced, because there's people that want to try to take that away from us. So a law has to be introduced, it has to be passed, it has to be implemented, it has to be enforced, and people have to be held accountable.
That's a really good point. You mentioned, legislation and pushing for change, starting with voting, but then also just continuing to put pressure on our elected officials to make change. But we have this division in our country right now that just seems to be making it very hard to pass legislation to implement change. Why do you think that is, and what can we do about it?
Well, I think we have a lot of ignorance in our society right now, and a lot of this MAGA people and the haters out there, they're literally not very well educated. It's what it amounts to. So we have to look at our education system. How can we fund our education system the way that we fund the Department of Defense? The Department of Defense in the United States is the largest budget that we have, but our education budget does not equal that. And even in California, our high school budget is smaller, lower than our prison budget. So the money that we're spending on prisons with our tax dollars should be going to education. So I think that's one way that we have to tackle the problem. The other way is to, again, going back to just grassroots organizing, to meet with people in small numbers, something like a Tupperware party or a jewelry party, get a few people at a time, get them together and start breaking down the whole system to them so that they can understand where the racism comes from, where all the racial injustice comes from. And so people can be educated.
Immigration is going to be on the ballot this year. And after years of advocacy for immigrant rights, activists like you are still fighting so many of the same fights. What would you say about where our current immigration policy stands, and what policies do lawmakers need to enact that respects the dignity of this group of people?
It's such a big issue. And when Trump says immigration and he's attacking immigrants, he's really attacking people of color. It's part of the racism that Trump and many of the MAGA people are perpetuating against people of color. And, we have to constantly remind them that they're the true immigrants to this country. The people at the border that are trying to seek asylum, they are the indigenous people of the continent, of the North American continent, South American continent. They were here first, okay? People that came from Europe, like my great-grandmother who came from Spain, my other great-grandfather who came from England, they were the true immigrants, okay? Because on my father's side of the family, our indigenous side, we were here first, okay? To greet them when they got here.
You're 94 now. How are you thinking about so many of these things that we're talking about that you fought for in the realm of women's rights or labor rights, seeing the erosion or rollback of things like Dobbs or affirmative action or voting rights being taken away? How does that make you feel? What does it make you think about the importance of the moment that we're in now?
Well, I think we have to look and really do more work. Who are the people behind some of these reactive policies that we're having to fight again? But we know at the same time that there are some goals, and I want to talk specifically about the Equal Rights Amendment for women, because that is in the Congress right now, and we can actually pass it because there have been enough states to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment that now we just have to get the Congress to pass it, as they did the 19th Amendment.
What is that going to take? We've been trying to get the ERA. They've been trying to get that passed your whole life. It still hasn't happened. What is it going to take to get that across the finish line? This
year, it's actually passed the Senate. It's in the House of Representatives, and we're trying to get a few more We're short just a few congressmen right now to be able to sign what they call a discharge petition, and to get it on the floor. to be able to get it on the floor. If we can get it on the floor, then we can actually pass it. So we're just short a few congressmen. So people out there that are listening to us, please contact your congressperson in the House of Representatives. Ask them to sign the discharge petition so we can get a vote on the ERA. And we have enough Democrats right now in the House that they could actually pass it if we can just peel off a few Republicans, okay? So it's a possibility. But we're very, very close. And if we can get the Equal Rights Amendment passed, that's going to really correct a lot of the issues, especially when it comes to discrimination against women on Title IX, on the reproductive rights issues, on salary issues, et cetera. That's going to be a biggie.
Well, with the current political climate and these ongoing challenges to democratic principles, I mean, you talk about passing the ERA. What are some of the other most pressing issues that you think we need to address to keep democracy alive?
I mentioned education. I think that's one we really haven't looked at enough in terms of changing the way that education is funded so that our students can have more of the support that they need, so that our teachers can have more of the support that they need, not only in terms of better curriculums, but also have more counselors, more social workers, the type of support that teachers need. Because right now our poor teachers, they're trying to do everything and they're not getting the support that they need. And also more attention on who we elect to our school boards to make sure that we get people elected to the school boards that are really going to promote good issues. Here in California, we passed a law that they have to have ethnic studies now in all of our high schools and our community colleges. And it's going to be a requirement for graduation. And we have to get ethnic studies and gender studies also, labor studies, so people can learn about the labor movement and get this down into our elementary school level and our middle school so that kids don't have to wait until they go to high school to learn about how labor unions really created the wealth of this country and got so many rights, including how we got the 8-hour day. It was labor unions that fought for the 8-hour day. And people don't know that those labor leaders that fought for the 8-hour day, they were executed. They were hung. And so many things that we take for granted, weekends, Social Security, workers' compensation, parental leave that we have, so many of the things that we have that we just take for granted, it was actually labor that went out there and fought for those.
I mean, that leads me to my next question, which is about the role of grassroots activism. I mean, in your experience, what role does grassroots activism play in safeguarding democracy? And for people who are looking to organize at the local level, how can they do that effectively?
Well, we have seen some really successful wins when it comes to grassroots organizing. We have Ms. Cortez from New York, who is in the Congress right now, who was elected with grassroots organizers. We see that happening here in California. We have a lot of young people running for office, and they have the machinery that is getting them elected. It's not about money. It's about how many people they can get on the street to get out there and register to vote and get out the vote and get these progressive people elected. So this is the answer to our being able to win so many of these victories that we need, is to get young people, not just young people, but grandparents like myself also, get them to get involved in registering people to vote. Because a lot of people they don't understand how important the vote is, and they don't like the candidates. And so then they say, well, I'm not going to vote. But they don't realize when you're voting for yourself. It's not just about who's running for office. Whoever is running for office, we can pressure them to do the right thing. But we have to get people to register to vote and to vote in the first place.
Well, how do you get them to do that? So many people feel disillusioned or disempowered by politics. What do you tell people to encourage them, to get them to stay engaged and hopeful about the future of democracy? Because I hear you sound very hopeful.
Well, I sound hopeful because I do believe in people. But again, you have to go back. Then you have to, like we do with our Dolores Huerta Foundation here, we actually go out there and talk to the people door to door. We go to their houses and we talk to them and explain to them the importance of voting. It's called the Democracy 101. So we can really understand how our democratic system works and that they are part of the democratic system, because a lot of people don't feel that they are part of the democratic system. So it takes a lot of patience, and it just takes that organizing, going out there. And because we know a lot of people really have good hearts. people have goodwill, but you have to really tap into that and make them understand that you also have to be responsible. Senator Robert Kennedy, before he was assassinated, the last words that he said were, "We have obligations and responsibilities to our fellow citizens," And if we can think about that, we just passed the COVID pandemic. During COVID, what were we constantly being reminded that we had to take care of our health and other people's health? It was not just about us, it was about other people that we could get infected or they could infect us. And it's the same thing here. We could actually go out there and share these democratic values and explain to them, to people, to make them understand that they are part of the system. They are the system. This is the only game in town. A young person said to me once, a couple of them have said, "Is there something else that we can do?" I said, "No. When it comes down to the decision making, the only thing we can do is vote."
Well, looking back on your lifelong commitment to activism, what do you hope that your legacy will be, and what message would you like to leave for future generations?
I hope my legacy is that, again, we have a responsibility not only to be activists, but to recruit other people to also become activists. My legacy, I want it to be one of the power of organizing, the power of collective action, the power of nonviolent action also to be able to succeed.
Well, I think that is great, a great message for future generations, and a message that I will take for myself now in the present as well. So thank you so much, Dolores, for joining the amendment.
Okay, I'm going to throw in one more, okay? And this is from Coretta Scott King, who said, "We will never have peace in the world until women take power," okay? So I'm going to throw that one in there, but I'll change the word from women to say feminists. We will never have peace in the world until feminists take power. So we've got to keep working to get more feminists elected at every level of government. Sí se puede. Yes, we can.
All right, so before we go, I wanted to refocus us briefly on the election because there are only 5 months left to go until November 4th. Yesterday was National Register a Friend Day, and I want to make sure that all of you, my friends, are aware of your own voter registration status. So if y'all aren't sure where you stand, you're unclear whether or not you're registered, or if you just have a few questions about making a plan to vote, the 19th has a partnership with I Am a Voter to help get things in order. All you've got to do is text 19th News, that's 19TH News, to 26797. You'll get a text message back to confirm whether or not you're all set in your zip code. So try it out, share it with a friend, and we'll see you at the ballot box. The Amendment is a co-production of the 19th News and Wonder Media Network. It is executive produced by Jenny Kaplan, Terry Rupar, and Faith Smith. Wonder Media Network's head of development is Emily Rutter. Julia B. Chan is the 19th's editor-in-chief. The Amendment is edited by Jenny Kaplan, Grace Lynch, and Emily Rutter. And it is produced by Desawa Aguinaldo, Grace Lynch, Brittany Martinez, and Taylor Williamson, with production assistance from Lucy Jones and post-production support from Julie Bogan, Victoria Clark, Lance Dixon, and Winton Wong. Artwork by Aria Goodman, and our theme music was composed by Jay Lynn.